All right, this is topic 6, part C. For this lesson, we are going to talk about inequalities wording. The skill that we are talking about today is translate verbal statements into equations and inequalities. You guys already did the translate verbal statements into equations. Today, we're more focused on the inequalities part. So first, let's talk about our symbols. We're going to go over a few words that might symbolize that we're using those symbols. So first is less than. If we have a number less than something, we might see smaller than, fewer than, below, or under. All of those words would signal our brain, hey, this should be less than that number. Oops. Less than or equal to. So that means it has to be less than, but it could also equal that number exactly. So no more than, a maximum of, or at most would all mean we're going to use less than or equal to. Greater than, this is usually pretty easy to pick out. If you have more than, above, larger than, greater than, that's the symbol you're going to use. Greater than or equal to would be at least. If I have at least 5 M&Ms, that means I have 5 or more. If I have a minimum of 5 M&Ms, that would be 5 or more. Or no less than would be greater than or equal to as well. All right, so let's do some of these. If you want to go ahead and just pause right now and try all of these and then check with me, you can. Or if you want to just listen and follow along, that's fine too. Whatever you need. So number 1, x must be fewer than 5. So x is less than 5 would be the answer for that one. And remember, when you're doing your symbols, I always use this analogy, and I think I always will, but the alligator eats the bigger number. So the alligator looks like it's eating the 5. So 5 is bigger. That means x is fewer than 5. All right, x has a maximum of -3. A lot of people get maximum and minimum confused when they're doing their greater than or less than. But if x has a maximum of -3, that means -3 is the highest number that x could be. So it has to actually be lower than that. So we're going to use the less than or equal to. X is less than or equal to -3. That means it can be -3 or anything lower than that, because -3 is the maximum. Number 3, I must get at least a 2.5 on my assignment. So we're going to use x again. That means I have to get a 2.5 or greater. So x is greater than or equal to 2.5. So it means I can get a 2.5, I can get a 3, I can get a 4. It has to be at least a 2.5.
Code blue in the comments. Code blue in the comments.
That would happen. That is just a drill. There is nothing happening. It's just a drill that we are doing. Number 4. I must eat at least 1,600 calories, but no more than 2,300 calories. So this one we have 2 different numbers to deal with. This is a compound inequality. So let's write this 2 different ways. Let's split it up first. I must eat at least 1,600 calories. So that means what I'm eating has to be more than. So I'm going to use greater than or equal to. Meaning I could just eat 1,600 calories and call it good, or I could eat a little bit more than that. Okay? And it also says I can eat no more than 2,300 calories. So that means I have to eat less than or equal to 2,300. So that's what it looks like if it's separated out with x first. But remember, you can also write this as a compound inequality. This is an and inequality because it has to meet both things at the same time. And how I remember and inequalities is and inequalities are always in between 2 numbers. So I know my x is in between 1600 and 2300. Or in other words, I have to eat in between this amount of calories. And then when I'm doing my symbols, I just think, okay, X has to be greater than, so make the alligator eat the bigger number. I have to eat more than 1600 calories, but less than 2300 calories. So it looks like that. Either way is fine for now. The class average was above 2.7, so above means greater than. So X is greater than 2.7. The star basketball player scored at least 12 points. So X is my star basketball player scoring at least, which means greater than, equal to 12 points. So that means that basketball player could have scored 12 points, 13 points, 14 points, but it has to be at least 12. We have another compound inequality here. This one talks about the temperature for the day. The low temperature for the day is 58 degrees and the high is 86. So again, we could write this out as two separate inequalities. So X has to be at least 58 degrees, right? Which means X is greater than or equal to 58. That's the low temperature. And X has to be less than or equal to 86 if that's the high temperature. Or if you wrote it as a compound inequality, we know if the low is 58 for the day and the high is 86, that means our temperature at all times is in between those two numbers. So again, I always do it this way first, and then I fill in my signs. So I know the temperature has to be greater than 58 or equal to, because it could just be 58 degrees. But then my temperature has to be less than or equal to 86 degrees. So there's how you would write that compound and inequality. And then last one, another compound. I work a minimum of 25 hours a week, so that means I have to work at least that amount. X is greater than or equal to 25, but no more than 40 hours a week, because then I go over. So X has to be less than or equal to 40. Or if you wrote it as a compound inequality, the hours that I work would be somewhere in between 25 and 40. And I'd fill in my signs this way. X is greater than or equal to 25, but less than or equal to 40. Okay? Make sure you're reaching out if you need any help. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day.